4 million years ago, the Earth looked very different from the world we know today. Vast stretches of dense forests covered much of the land, but between them, open grasslands and wide plains were beginning to form as the climate slowly shifted. In this environment lived early hominids, creatures that walked partly upright yet still carried many features of the great apes. They had long arms for climbing trees, powerful jaws for chewing tough roots, and bodies covered in thick hair to protect them from both the burning sun and the cool nights. They were not yet human in the modern sense, but they were not gorillas either. They stood in between, surviving with both instinct and an emerging intelligence. Life was a constant struggle. Predators such as saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, and crocodiles lurked at every corner of the rivers and savannas. These early hominids had no weapons, no fire, and no shelters except the caves and trees where they tried to hide at night. Their survival depended on their ability to stay together in small groups, to gather food during the day, and to protect each other from danger. The first spark of cooperation, sharing food, warning cries, moving as one, was what separated them from other animals. This was the fragile beginning of human society, even if they did not yet understand what they were becoming. Food was the central struggle of every day. These hominids did not farm or cook. They knew nothing of planting seeds or controlling fire. Instead, they survived on fruits, leaves, seeds, and whatever small creatures they could catch with their bare hands. Sometimes, when a predator killed a larger animal, they would sneak close after the danger had passed, using sharp stones to scrape meat from the bones. It was dangerous work, because the smell of flesh could easily attract lions or wild dogs. But those scraps of meat provided a richness of energy that fruits and plants could not. Slowly, over generations, their jaws and stomachs began to adapt, and their brains grew slightly larger with the new diet. They learned to crack nuts with rocks, to dig roots from the hard soil, and to use sticks to pull insects from hidden nests. Each small discovery was not planned, but born out of desperation and repeated chance. They did not invent tools as we think of invention today. Rather, they stumbled upon them, remembered them, and copied each other. The young watched the elders closely, mimicking their actions, and so knowledge, primitive and fragile, was passed on. It was the earliest form of culture, unspoken but alive. In this way, survival was not only about the strength of muscles but also about memory, observation, and the beginnings of thought. The nights were the most terrifying time. Without fire, darkness belonged to the predators. The hominids huddled together in trees or caves, clutching each other for warmth and comfort. Every rustle in the grass or distant roar sent fear through their bodies, a fear deeper than words, pure instinct that kept them alive. They did not understand the stars above them or the moon that grew and shrank, but they stared at them with wide eyes, sensing some power beyond themselves. Rainstorms soaked their fur, and lightning split the skies, shaking the ground and scaring them into silence. Sometimes floods swept across the lowlands, forcing them to move quickly, carrying infants on their backs while searching for new dry ground. Migration was not a choice but a necessity. Food vanished in one place, or danger grew too great, and so they wandered across the land, never staying too long in one place. In this endless movement, they encountered other groups like themselves. Sometimes they avoided one another, fearful and suspicious. Other times, they clashed, fighting over territory or food. Yet in rare moments, they may have joined together, sharing space for survival, and in doing so, their bloodlines mixed. Slowly, very slowly, the species adapted, spread, and changed. The harsh world shaped their bodies and their minds, forcing them to be more than animals, even if they did not yet know what being human meant. Over thousands of years, these early hominids laid the foundation of what would one day become humanity. They were still bound by the limits of their environment. No fire, no spoken language, no knowledge of farming or shelter building. But inside them, small changes were taking place. Their hands grew more skillful, their minds more curious, their groups more cooperative. They began to recognize the importance of watching over children, for the young took many years to grow, unlike other animals. This long childhood forced the group to nurture and protect, creating stronger social bonds. They also developed louder calls and gestures to warn of predators, calls that slowly became more complex over generations. The simple act of pointing, crying out, or imitating sounds gave them a tool to coordinate, to plan hunts, to share information. These were tiny steps, but each one mattered. While to us, millions of years later, their lives might look brutish and short, in truth they were living the first chapter of a long story, the story of becoming human. From those early gorilla-like figures struggling for survival, through countless generations of adaptation, would one day rise the ability to control fire, to speak, to imagine gods and stories, to build tools and civilizations. But in that ancient time, all they knew was hunger, fear, and the endless search for food and safety. Yet hidden within those struggles was the seed of everything to come.